Hey everybody, Fletch from All Things Overlanding here. Welcome to the episode. On today's Xterra Talk, we're going to be talking about my suspension setup on the Xterra. I do get a lot of questions about just what I'm running. You know, I think a lot of folks that are into Xterras, there aren't a ton of options when it comes to suspension. I mean, maybe like 4 or 5 that I can think of. Old Man Emu, Nisstec. There's a few of them that are pretty big, but you know, a lot of people have questions, and also I feel like a lot of people spend a ton of money on their setups, right? Like if you go to Nisstec, they have some great stuff, but you could spend $1,500 to $3,000 really easy on your setup. My setup is definitely a budget-minded setup, so I'm going to kind of go through the front coilovers that I've got. I'm going to go through the rear setup because that is really a unique sort of custom setup that I've done there. So I'm going to go through all that stuff just to kind of give you guys a walk around and an in-depth of the suspension setup that I've got. We'll dive right into that here in just a second. Before we do, I did want to touch on my featured partners. There are links to all these guys down below. But if you're into overlanding, there's Overland Addict, which is an awesome website with just everything gear related to overlanding. So if you're looking for anything from Colby valve stems to a rooftop tent to fuel cans, that sort of thing, definitely check him out. Also, Last US Bags, another great company. They're out west. They're owned by a guy that is an overlander, so he makes awesome overlanding bags from his own experience just for people like us. So he's awesome. Check out Last US Bags as well. I just grabbed a bug out of the air. Did you see that? That was impressive. Third, More Overland Expo. Awesome Midwestern style expo. It is happening in February of 2021. They haven't even opened up tickets yet, so if you click below, it'll take you to their Facebook event where you can pre-register. That way you'll be notified when the real tickets become available. Last but not least, Cindy Pope, Northology Adventures. There's a link down below to that too. She does custom guided events to like take you out on cool trips, and she also has a free digital overlanding magazine, so you can subscribe to that. Again, it's totally free. There's a link in the description down below. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright guys, so now as you can see we're at the front. I do have Freedom Off-Road Upper Control Arms. Now I really like these things. They were very inexpensive, very affordable for what you get. They're about 360 bucks shipped for a pair of them. The reason that I bought them was because my upper control arms, or my upper ball joints, sorry, in the stock control arms had gone bad. So I figured, you know what, for not that much more money, I might as well just replace the whole upper control arm when I do the ball joints. And it made the job a little bit easier, honestly. It's, you know, you pull out the couple of bolts up here at the top and mount in the new ones, pull off the castle nut on the bottom, and you're good to go. So those are the upper control arms, Freedom Off-Road. I'll put a link down below to those. My suspension in the front then, I just did the lower ball joints with OEM stuff recently, but then I've got Nisstec Mk84 Coilovers. These things have been fantastic. So basically there is a small little spacer lift on the top. I think it's like an inch or an inch and a half. And then the rest is all done with suspension, and they are adjustable. So I believe it's 2.5 to 4 inches. They are currently set to about 2.5 inches of total lift. So I've got about 2.5 in the front. And then with the rough country longer shackles in the rear, I should have about 2.5, but I am experiencing some droop. So you can kind of see, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not great. It's a little bit lower for sure. So that's basically the setup. Freedom Off-Road, upper control arms when the ball joints went bad, and then the suspension in the front was just kind of shot. I started with a rough country spacer lift, the 2.5 inch that matches the rear shackle, and it wasn't terrible, but it did not ride that great. It was very inexpensive though. It's about 150 bucks. So again, I'll put a link to that down below. If you are just looking to fit bigger tires and you want a little bit of a lift for cheap, that is a great option. And I rode it for about 2.5 years before I got these, but I will say, like people say, you know, buy once, cry once. And I definitely think that's true because these springs ride so much better than the old ones with the spacer lift. Like night and day. It's almost like a big boxy Cadillac. And I say that jokingly, right? It's obviously not quite as comfortable as like a luxury car. But I mean, the ride is so much better than it was on the stock suspension with the spacers. So highly recommend this setup. I think it's really great. It's been on the car for about on the truck for about a year and a half now, and they've just been flawless. I did blow a shock about a year ago on a trip to West Virginia. I have no idea how. It was right after I put them on actually. So that was it's been about a year they've been on. But I contacted Nisstec. They sent me a new shock. The shock was about 220 bucks, I believe. So not terrible, but it just kind of sucked that I just put them on and then I blew a shock. But again, since then, they've been flawless. They've been great. So I do recommend them. So these are the Overleaf helper springs. These things were about 35 bucks at like a Napa or an AutoZone. I put them on about 2 years ago, and they have helped significantly with leaf droop. It's starting to catch back up again. They're obviously not going to last forever, so I am thinking about a full leaf replacement because I do have rough country extended shackles in the rear. So especially with all that extra weight of the drawer system up here and the rooftop tent up on the roof and everything, I've got a lot more weight pushing down on these things. So considering that the truck is, about 15, 16 years old, it's actually pretty impressive that it's done this well with extended shackles and just an Overleaf helper spring. I did also replace, if you can see up in there, the rear shocks. So I was still on the stock shocks before, from a regular old 05 SE trim Xterra, and the things were beat. I'm telling you, they were just destroyed. They were rusting out. They were falling apart. It still rode okay, but I had the opportunity to pick up these Bilsteins off of an off-road trim. So they're OEM ones from a friend of mine who he had put about 50,000 miles on them, and then he replaced his full rear suspension. So he sent me these things, just slightly used, and I replaced the rear shocks, and I tell you what, it made a huge difference in the ride. So the thing rides so much better now. So that's the rear setup. Just wanted to touch on that. Again, I'm just trying to go as in-depth as I can on my suspension setup. You can see in there too, that tube there is my rear diff breather. So you definitely want to do that. If you have an Xterra, take the time, do the diff breather mod. It comes up to right here. You can see it right there. It comes right up behind the tail light, and then you just mount it inside here, put your tail light back over it, and your diff you don't have to worry about your diff filling with water, which is great. All right, guys, so that was the walkthrough of the suspension. Again, hopefully that gave you enough detail as far as what my setup is, front and rear. I am sway barless, which I did not mention in there, so I have not had sway bars since the day I bought the truck. I actually brought it home, threw 33-inch ATs on it, the rough country lift, and took the sway bars off immediately, like the first week that I had the truck. So I've pretty much driven the truck for the last 4 years with no sway bars. I will say it is far less scary than people seem to say that it is. I mean, it definitely does lean back and forth, particularly with the DIY rooftop tent on the top. It'll move a little bit, but you get used to it. You just know where the limits are. You need to learn where the limits are. So I will say if you are really nervous about that, you may just disconnect them and try it and see what you think. Give it a couple weeks just to kind of get used to it, but it gives me so much more droop and so much more capability off-road. And I don't have to disconnect anything or do anything when I get to the trails. It's already done. And if you're just careful on the street, then you'll be perfectly fine. So I did want to mention that too. So again, I hope this was helpful for you guys. I hope that gave you a ton of information about the suspension setup. As always, if you have any questions though, post up in the comments down below. I'd be happy to answer them for you. So again, thanks for stopping by. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, definitely click that red subscribe button, click the bell to be notified when new videos drop. I do a couple videos at least every week, Thursday nights at 9 Eastern. Right now I'm doing them bi-weekly. I also do live streams, so come hang out, come have a beer, chat with us. We pick different topics and we just kind of hang out and chat on YouTube. So if any of that is something you're into, definitely subscribe. Also, there are links below, but I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and I have a podcast that comes out every week. So if you're into any of this stuff, definitely pick your way or ways that you want to hang out and subscribe and join the conversation, and I'd love to talk to you. So again, thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you on the next one.